Well, in the last video, we looked at Newcastle Brown Ale, and somebody commented and recommended that I review Modelo Negro. I was honestly kind of surprised that I hadn't reviewed it yet. I mean, as of right now, Modelo, there we go. I don't know, this bottle opener kind of sucks with these Modelo bottles. I don't know what it is. Normally, I wouldn't even peel the foil off, but with that bottle opener, it's just a pain. But anyway, Modelo as of right now, 2026, is the most drank or most sold beer in the United States. I think it was about a year or two ago they took the spot from Bud Light, and honestly, I'm glad to hear it. I think I've already reviewed the regular Modelo. If I haven't, I need to review that as well because it's a pretty solid beer. Now, as far as this Modelo Negro, we're going to figure that out today. So real quick, appearance-wise, if I'm remembering correctly, this looks pretty similar to that Newcastle Brown Ale. So obviously this is a Mexican beer, but it's brewed in the style of a German Dunkel, I think. I want to say it's brewed kind of in the style of a Dunkel. So you're going to be, it's going to be more dark, more rich. And you get that on the nose. It's a little richer, but it still has that kind of just Mexican beer smell, if that makes sense. Same thing with the flavor. I'm going to go ahead and kind of spoil that. You have a similar undertone of that Mexican beer flavor. I think it's something that most Mexican beers do with, I want to say like a yeast treatment or something similar to that, that causes that distinct note. Real quick, it says here, medium-bodied lager with slow roasted caramel malt, brewed for a rich, smooth taste. And I don't believe I mentioned it, but the ABV is 5.4% alcohol by volume. Go ahead and take a sip. That's good. I was going to come out and just say that this is one of my favorite darker beers as well, at least easy to find ones. And if I'm being honest, this is one, I'm kind of biased with this beer as well, just because when I go to eat Mexican, most of the time this is what I get. Sometimes I get a Corona, sometimes if I get lucky they have Carta Blanca, which is very good. Corona Familiar is another one of my favorites, but this one never fails. And honestly, for the weather like it is today, it was 85 degrees yesterday, record high. Today it's like 50 and the wind's blowing, so you can probably hear that. And I also got a Boston Butt on the old Weber kettle. As soon as this video ends, I'm gonna go ahead and crack that open and take a look at that. It's been on there almost 2 hours. Oh, excuse me. My meat probe, excuse me once more, didn't charge, so I'm just kind of doing all that by temperature on the grill, so that should be interesting. But I think we'll do just fine. I mean, it's a Boston Bud. As long as I keep track of the temperature, make sure it doesn't go crazy over 300, it's gonna be decent, so can't complain. But anyway, as far as the weather today, like I said, it's cooler, and this is kind of where this beer excels. It's similar to the Newcastle Brown Ale in that it is a beer that you'd probably want for cooler weather, but it's still reasonably light enough that you can kind of drink year-round. This is not a beer that I would go to immediately after doing yard work, and say in the middle of August, 90-something degrees outside. However, I could drink this and enjoy it pretty well if it was, on the porch in August outside, kind of relaxing. You can drink this year-round, although it does excel in more cooler weather like this or with Mexican. Flavor-wise, I get a little bit of coffee, get a little bit of chocolate. I know it's gonna sound pretty much like the last video, and it's not the same, but similar in idea. This beer, just like the Newcastle Brown Ale, serves a similar purpose. It's a dark malty beer, but still somewhat sessionable. I mean, you're not gonna drink a 12-pack. Yeah, you could, especially Mexicans. Them people can drink. But this beer's not necessarily designed to drink 12 of them, but if you're in a good mood, you got some carne asada, I can definitely get through 6 of these quite easily in a pretty short session. As far as a hop bite, there's not much there. Just enough hops to balance it out, but it's mostly the malt that shines through on this. Rich, kind of sweet, not sickly sweet, but there is a mild sweetness there. I'm going to admit my palate is a little bit off, and it's kind of embarrassing, but what happened was, this isn't the second Modelo I cracked. I actually had to pour the first one out because I had put some dish soap in the bottom, and then got distracted with something, came back like 20 minutes later, was like, oh yeah, grab this, poured a beer in on video, didn't even look inside. There's just a little bit of dish soap, but the thing foamed up immediately, and I was like, what in the hell is going on? Then I took a sip, and I was like, oh no, that's bad. So my palate is still a little, I guess, overwhelmed, but I've drank this beer enough to know what I'm getting into. As far as Mexican beers in general, this is one of the better ones. They're all pretty good. You know, I don't care for Sol. That's kind of watery. Although it's been a couple years since I've had it, I need to honestly try that again. Pacifico's fine. Carta Blanca, I think, is probably my favorite pale lager. That or Familiar. The Familiar is a little more. Corona Familiar is a little more malty. Modelo Negro is up there. Modelo. The Christmas one they came out with this year was great. Wish I'd reviewed that. I should have. I bought some. That's good. Honestly, pretty much every Mexican beer I've had so far is great. Bohemia is really good. I don't know. Anyway, compared to American beer, with Mexican beer, I think the floor is a little bit higher up. You know, there's some American beers that are just terrible. And then there's a lot of American beers that are just kind of fine. And then there's some American beers that are truly great. With Mexican beers, at least the stuff I've had, it seems like that bad is just more mediocre. Like, I've drank a good bit of Tecate in my time, and that's not bad at all, but compared to other Mexican beers, it's just kind of meh. And that's really, at least with the stuff you can get in the United States, normally the worst thing you can say about a Mexican beer is it's meh. But this one here is probably top 3. My father prefers Dos Equis Amber more, but I think the Modelo Negro has a little more body, a little more maltiness, a little more rich. And honestly, the closest thing, at least to what you can get in the United States as far as a darker Mexican beer comparable, would be Dos Equis Amber. And Dos Equis Amber, like I said, is just a tick or two lighter compared. As far as a rating goes, for the style of Mexican lager, although you could say that's a little unfair because it is kind of a broader style. We're also going to be comparing some pale lager in there along with something like this. But as far as just, you know, your normal Mexican selection that you can get at your local gas station or grocery store, this, I would say this is an 8 out of 10. Price-wise, I don't really look at beer prices anymore. Not because I have a lot of money, but because I don't like acknowledging how much more expensive things are now. But I'm sure most stores, this is going to be comparable to Corona, and it's going to be comparable to every other beer. But overall, like I said, I think 8 out of 10 is more than fair. The only other beers that I would prefer, and I've already said this, but I would prefer over this is Carta Blanca and Corona Familiar. But honestly, depending on the day of the week, you could flip those around. But anyway, we're going to go with an 8 out of 10. You know, like, rate, subscribe if you care to. I think in the last video I forgot to mention, kill your local pedophile. Just, you know, whether he's on a list or not. Just, you know what I'm saying? Probably should have said that. And hopefully you're going to be eating good tonight. I got to go check that, actually, we got a little bit left here. I gotta go check that, but I'm gonna baste it with some Eastern North Carolina kind of, you know, vinegar, hot sauce, kind of barbecue sauce, very thin. At least compared to, you know, things like Kansas City style, things like that. But anyway, now I'm rambling, so it's time to go. So anyway, have a good night or a good day and a pleasant tomorrow.